All right. Good evening, guys. Welcome back. JL Scott Fishing and Eats. Hope everybody is doing well. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody that has tuned into the channel the last 2 years here on YouTube or the new Smallie Chaser channel. If you're tuning in there, that's been up for about 2 months or so, 2 or 3 months or so. Just want to let you know, I appreciate you. We crossed the 23,000 subscriber threshold on YouTube, which is kind of a big deal. We're not the biggest. Certainly not the biggest fishing channel in our region by far, but we certainly continue to grow each and every month. So thankful for everybody. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, appreciate you considering doing so. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of participating in the giveaways, all that stuff that we do on our channel. We'll bring to the other channel as well if you're really into smallmouth. The JL Scott Fishing page is pretty much just our region, everything that's happening, largemouth, stuff in the bay, upper bay, all that good stuff, whereas the Smallie Chaser channel really concentrates on smallmouth. And we got an event. I'll be heading out to the New River for this weekend, so hopefully we're going to have a ton of awesome smallmouth footage from the New River. I'll be heading there and spending 2 or 3 days down on the New River doing some ledge fishing. So I'll get some videos, and we'll talk a little bit about those and talk a little bit about how that differs from, say your ledges on, say, the Tennessee River, how our ledges in Virginia really differ, whether we're talking Shenandoah, the James River, or the New River, for example, or even the Upper Potomac. When we say ledge fishing in those rivers, it's not like ledge fishing on Lake Gunnersville, for example. Okay, they're two entirely different things, but your tactics and strategies that you employ can be the same in terms of, for example, if you're fishing at a kayak, your kayak positioning to the ledge, where you're pitching, where you're throwing that ledge. A lot of times you'll find a lot of down south, a lot of these ledges, whether it be Pickwick, whether it be Gunnersville, that you may be familiar with because of Bassmaster or MLF on TV, there's always a lot of water on the top side of those ledges, right? Whereas in our river systems, ledges can be inches. Okay. And depending on right now, the New River is at 2.2 to 2.3 feet. So those ledges are going to be pretty much kind of up in the column, so to speak. Okay. So it makes it a little bit different than, say, fishing ledges down south. But the premises are the same. Strategies are the same. But all that kind of leads to, things that we see in our river systems. And that is really, really what tonight's stream is really going to be about. We're about just approaching summer, technically, although it's felt like summer quite a bit. The last week and a half, we've been in the 90s in the DMV. That's the District, Maryland, and Virginia, if you're not familiar. And, we got summer coming this week, right? And that kicks in from now until about the 3rd week of September. When summer ends, the fishing begins to change a little bit, right? Last year, if you remember, in 2023, when we go over the Virginia non-tidal river systems update, okay, heading into summer, compare it to where the forecast was for 2024 for our river systems, which predominantly, the featured river systems predominantly in the forecast from Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources are pretty much Smallie rivers. Now, there are largemouth bass, obviously, but it's pretty much a lot of the smallmouth dominated river systems, okay, which is great for our series and for the people that I fish with, because we predominantly chase smallies. So there always tends to be a lot more information. I will say this. I think in the last few years, we have seen smallmouth fishing recover. I think part of that's kayak fishing, to be honest, because I've seen it where I have been out and not seen, was 5, 6, 7 years ago, been out and seen like one, maybe a boat or maybe a guy on the bank, 1 or 2. Then COVID hit. You saw like 6 or 7 when you went out, even during the week. And now with the evolution of the kayak platform, you're seeing a lot more in our Smallie river systems, which is great. And those platforms allow you to get into places that obviously, John boats, jet boats can, for the most part, if you're in that part of the state. And I'm on the Upper Potomac. Jet boats were running this week, especially heading up where there's deeper water. And then down in the Piedmont section, not so much. It's basically canoe and kayak. So the fishing, is a lot different. So when we talk about the non-tidal kind of forecast, keep in mind that when any state, does its due diligence and does its parameters that they do to release a study or a forecast, understand that most of this is a snapshot. Okay. And while it is a great resource to understand, when we break these rivers down tonight and go over what the state is saying about these individual fisheries, it's important to note that your greatest resource is your fellow angler and those anglers that are willing to share. Not just my channel, but there are quite a few other channels in the region. There's quite a few other anglers in the region. If you want to, if you're interested in getting following those individuals, just message me. And I'll shoot you those links to the individuals that I follow, the individuals that I think are a vital resource in terms of knowledge. Okay. To me, these people are what we call KTS, knowledge transfer specialists. If you're in the military, if you're in the military, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Knowledge transfer specialists. They are going to transfer their wealth of knowledge to you to make you a better angler. Those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. Those are the people that I hope are part of our community. Those are the people I really think subscribe to this channel, because that's pretty much what I tend to want to transition more to, away from the controversies, away from, those things on YouTube, things of the past, but I'm not, you guys know, I'm not a front to calling stuff out. Okay. When I believe it needs to get called out for the angler, fishing pressure is one. There tends to be this over predominantly like narrative driven thing about fishing pressure. When in reality, fishing pressure is subjective. And fishing pressure cannot be discussed in a vacuum. Fishing pressure relates to the fishing density of a particular river system, okay, or a lake, right? And that's what the studies do, okay? That's what the states do. That's what they do when they are doing their electro survey, when they're doing their studies, right? Again, snapshot in time, depending on what day they pick to go out there and do an electro survey, which are in the results in the non-tidal rivers forecast, okay? That skews perception, okay? And I can tell you, we have 35 anglers in the Smallie Chaser River Bassin series that are constantly every week fishing our river systems in the region, non-stop, okay? There are guys out there today. I actually scored about 10 smallmouth bass before coming on tonight, okay? 30 to 35 guys are out in 4, 5, 6 different river systems, okay? Each and every week. To me, that is a better resource than a one-off electro survey that tells me, hey, they caught, 600 or so smallmouth in this particular time, and this was the size. Again, snapshot that section of the river. Most of our rivers are enormous, okay, if you really think about it. Hundreds of miles, okay? And they do an electro survey in a specific area. I would love to see electro surveys done in multiple sections of a river the same week, to be more of a barometer in terms of releasing that information. It will skew. That's why you can't take it all. You've got to take it with a little bit of like, okay, it's a baseline, okay, because it is just a snapshot. Whereas the anglers out there, if you go on Tourney X and you go on Smallie Chaser River Bassin, you go back and look at the monthlies, and you go back and look at the Roanoke division or the Central division, and you can kind of see like, okay, what rivers are in those divisions, and then look at the catches, okay? Look at that. And you'll be able to judge for yourselves, like this is the quality of smallmouth that is being caught, okay, in these river systems. And it doesn't always jive with what the state, is releasing, with a one snapshot electro survey. And so you just have to take that for example. For example, the Upper James River, our series fished the Upper James River in April. Okay. We started off the season on the New River, and then we went to the Upper James in April. And in the report, obviously, the James River traverses the entire state of Virginia. Okay, it runs all the way from the confluence of the Jackson and Cowpasture, all the way through Lynchburg, all the way through Richmond, and on down to Tidal to become a tidal fishery for predominantly largemouth bass. So it goes through the whole game, the mountains to the Piedmont to the eastern quadrant. Okay, and so obviously, when you're talking about a fishery that's that immense, I mean, if you just take for Richmond, now the fall line in Richmond is your break between predominant smallmouth. There is some smallmouth below the fall line, but not enough. It's sort of like DC on the Potomac. They hang in DC, but they don't really get to the middle river, Potomac River, and the Tidal down in the middle Potomac. Okay, it's pretty much largemouth. So that fall line, from that fall line all the way to the confluence of the Jackson and Cowpasture, think of it all the way up to Iron Gate boat ramp. Okay, how many miles that is? Only one electro survey may cover that. And the electro survey that's picked may actually be in one of the river float sections, obviously that has a ramp, closest to a ramp, access for the boats, for the electro survey to do their study, and those things. So you have to always keep that in mind when you're reviewing releases from the state. Now, the state goes on to say, I mean, think about 90 miles. So from the confluence to Lynchburg is 90. So you can do the math from Lynchburg to Richmond. So this is from the state now, okay, in the forecast. Anglers can continue to expect reduced numbers of smallmouth bass in most areas of the upper James River in 2024. This is the forecast, okay? This was their forecast. Poor spawning and survival of young fish from 2015 to 2020 has led to an overall decrease in the smallmouth bass abundance. In the fall of 2023, 926, the fall of 2023, just this last fall, 926 smallmouth bass were collected using electrofishing gear, with approximately 50% of those bass considered catchable. Now, for a bass to be considered catchable by the state standards, that's at least a 7 to 8 inch bass, okay? An above average spawn in 2021 has resulted in a better number of smallmouth bass ranging from 7 to 10 inches, okay? The 2023 spawn, based on the survey, is expected to be more prolific, okay? So in all intents and purposes, last year was a good spawn for the upper James River water trail and watershed, okay? And those would be, the spawnings would be in the electro survey of those bass that are roughly 6 inches, six or 7 inches or less, okay, that get surveyed, and their population density overall in that 926, okay? So just think of it that if you break them down by size, all right? Approximately 18% of the total smallmouth bass collected in that fall 2023 survey, okay, were 14 inches or more, okay? 14 inches or more. So 18% were what we would consider to be adult smallmouth, okay? And still protected under various slot limits, meaning you're not supposed to catch and eat those size fish, okay, if you're so inclined to do that. That's really what that means. The above average spawns of 21 and 23 should yield better numbers of catchable size smallmouth bass over the next few years, okay? That's the upper James River, okay? That's the forecast. That was their forecast. Now, when you cross that with what we've seen in the Smallie Chaser River Bassin series, you kind of get a little bit of a disparity there. Now, you could argue that it's outstanding anglers, and outstanding anglers tend to always catch great bags of fish. But on balance, if you look at beginning last October until now, beginning the month of June, if you look at all the catches from the upper James River, from about a dozen or more, probably 12 to 15 of the anglers, you're definitely going to see a higher number of average, okay? And this would be an average catch of someone in a a 5-fish limit of being around 16 to 18 inches, okay? With dozens of citations taken, okay? So there are definitely 20-inch and higher, because we've seen them caught. I think a 21.25, I think, and I believe a 23. I think a 23 set the kayak bass fishing record for smallmouth in their smallmouth series. Was caught by a member of the series named Troy Wines. I believe it was 23.25. Maybe it was just 23. So that gives you an idea of what we're talking about with population. Now, the survey for me always provides a lot more information on density, like, with varying sizes, and you're going to have those varying sizes, varying size length and weight. And again, depending on, this survey was conducted in the fall. Okay. Wasn't a spring survey, for example. So there's always that you want to, play around with, and just kind of consider. So those are the things that you just want to grapple with. That was the forecast, but yet again, you got no major high water events so far in 2024. Keep your fingers crossed. Okay. We actually have lower water now in a lot of river systems. Upper Potomac, New River, like I said earlier, I think the new is at less than 2.5. Rapidan, Rappahannock, Shenandoah. Okay, they've just had some crazy storms here this week, so we'll see what happens. But all that kind of plays out with what we're talking about here, in terms of these are impactful things that will impact the health of the fishery. And the electro survey is really just that snapshot. Okay. And you're going to kind of see an ebb and flow of some of the fisheries, especially those fisheries that are actually conjoined. Like if you think about it, like the Maury and the James. The Maury River, though not featured here in this forecast, is certainly moving higher and higher and higher in the smallmouth bass population density category and in the size category. Now, that does not mean that there is a significant number of smallmouth 18 to 20 inches in the Maury relative to some other river systems. But what I'm implying is it's a lot higher now than it's been in the past. So the health of that fishery is promoting, smallmouth growth, okay, in the quality of bass that we are seeing in the Maury River. Okay, we've had in our series the Maury River win 2 of our events, even when the Maury River was not even the predominant river. It was part of the James River event. The angler in the series that won the James River event, Thomas Godby, won that event in the Maury River. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the quality of what we're experiencing. It isn't really showing up yet in a lot of the state studies and reports and electro survey. Okay. I think the last electro survey on the Maury, I think, was about 5 or 6 years ago. It might even have been back in 2013. And so that, again, so you gotta remember, these surveys aren't happening every single year in every single river system. The money is just not there for that. The money is going to other things. Okay. The state of Virginia has got 30%, I think 30% of all resources that the state garners in for fish, it goes to stocking programs, right? And so there's a lot of debate there and argument there in terms of where the money should go, for sure. But we'll see here in the coming years. Let me turn this down a little bit so you can get that glare out of the way. Much better. Beautiful night, by the way, here in the DMV. And so that's what you're going to, when you want to look for. So we got the Middle James here, smallmouth bass numbers in the Middle James. Now, the Middle James for the Commonwealth of Virginia in this particular forecast is Bent Creek to Watkins Landing. That's what they consider the Middle James. Now, most of us consider the Middle James, like Joshua Falls, James River State Park, all the way to Richmond. That's what most of anglers consider when you're talking with them about the Middle James. It could be a bass caught in the James River in Richmond, or it could be around Lynchburg, Joshua Falls, in that area. So just keep that in mind. But for the purposes of this discussion tonight, they're saying Bent Creek to Watkins Landing, okay, have declined steadily in recent years. Fall 2023 electroserving samples revealed modest signs of improvement. A total of 470. So roughly half as many smallmouth bass were caught in the fall 2023 survey conducted in the Middle James than what we saw in the Upper James, okay? And those watersheds are those areas can be quite different from grass, rock, shell, but everything. It can be very different as you make your way towards Richmond. You also got a long stretches of just flat, okay, that you don't really have in the Upper James, okay? And so keep that in mind. A total of 470 smallmouth bass were collected, 94% of those fish measuring less than 12 inches, okay? So 94. So that's higher because remember we said 18% of all of the 926 collected in the Upper James were greater than 14 inches. So this is saying in the Middle James, 94% of all fish collected were less than 12 inches. Fall 23 samples. Smallmouth. The fish that remain in the Middle River are growing very quickly and should provide modest opportunities to catch quality fish in the years to come. Recent detections of, here we go. Okay, here's the first sign of trouble. Okay, recent detections of Alabama bass. Okay, in the Tidal James. Okay, and really in and around Richmond. Okay, in and around the fall line. Now they believe from the folks I've talked to, they believe that those fish may have been introduced by anglers or whatever. Okay, which is illegal. Okay, because there have been Alabama bass in particular fisheries throughout Virginia, especially towards our southern border with North Carolina. They've made their way up from Norman and from places like that. They've made their way up into our river systems. We're going to talk about one a little later that's predominantly being bum rushed by Alabama bass. Now, a lot of times some people may think that it's Alabama bass in terms of the New River, the Roanoke, the Dan, the Stanton, okay? But they may be spots. They may be Kentucky, okay? And that's what we're going to get into with the state. And when we've got our little tags, little envelopes from the state to where we can take samples of the scale and send them to the state in order to be tested. That is really the only way you can be definitive in terms of testing, and it's genetic. You can't really just look at them. I get it. I know some people think that they have that, okay, where they could just look at a picture and say, that's an Alabama bass, that's a spotted bass. It really didn't work that way. I mean, you might be good with a good guess because the genetics, because of the hybridization, everything's in flux, okay? But this is the first sign, not the Upper James, but the Middle James, okay? So it's increased potential for more Alabama bass. Alabama bass are known to hybridize and outcompete smallmouth bass populations. That's the biggest worry, is they're known to outcompete and also reproduce faster and more often than smallmouth, and the fact that they could hybridize. And so that's a big thing. And so now you've got, let's move to, that's the Middle River. Okay, so that covers the Middle River in terms of the forecast. What we're seeing in the series from the Middle River is pretty consistent with that, I think. We see a lot of 14s and 15s. I think we've got a citation in the Richmond. I think we've got one citation in the Richmond area above the fall line. But predominantly it's 14s and 15s. That tends to be the size. And we have a few guys that fish in that Richmond, that Richmond area. So we have a lot more guys fish in, obviously, the Upper James, the Shenandoah, the Maury, the New, Upper Potomac. So, keep that in mind. But I think that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing in the series this year. So let's start now with where we're going to be on Saturday. The series is going to be on the New River, okay, on Saturday. We visited the New River in March, I think 92. I think Thomas Cox won the event with like 92.5 inches in March on a very windy and kind of crazy weather type environment where the water just kept rising all day long. And so we're now returning to the New River in June with probably a different outcome in terms of the number of fish caught or not. It's just the way it is. It's going to be a totally different fishery. It really is. I mean, depending on, what we see. Again, like I said, 2.2 feet. So unless they open up the water, to provide all the electricity and all that electro power for everybody's air conditions, because it's about 91 degrees. It's about 91 degrees down in Radford today. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But you can divide the New River into like three. But we're only going to talk about Virginia. You got the West Virginia side, okay, all the way up to the gorge. You've got the Virginia, which is split in half really by Clater, okay? And so the upper New River is actually below Clater, and the New River is actually above. So down river of Clater all the way to the state line with West Virginia, which for Saturday, all of that is in play all the way to Sandstone Falls for the event on Saturday. So we're going to get a really good indication because guys are going to spread out all over that fishery, just like in March, because there's so many quality areas. And so in 2023, when they did their electrofishing, they did the Clater Lake to the North Carolina state line. So think Freeze, okay, down there, Gallic, down in that part of the river, which is a completely different river, really, than Radford downriver, in my opinion. So smallmouth bass spring electrosurvey catch rates remain consistent from 22 to 23. So they actually tested in the New River, which happens often. They do the electrosurvey in the spring, not the fall, like the James, okay? Well above 2021 catch rates, more fish less than 8 inches were collected in 2023, indicating a strong cohort moving through the system from 21 to 22. That's what you want to see. You want to see the density of each class survival rates increase, okay? And you can do that and judge that when there's not natural catastrophic events, okay? Fish kills in the Shenandoah are not natural catastrophic events. Those are events caused by us as human beings, okay, in industry and agriculture, okay? Those are not natural occurring things. Floods are naturally occurring, okay? And so if you don't have that, this is what you tend to see. We've seen that in the Upper Potomac for the last 5 years or 6 years now, because this year is phenomenal. Okay, don't let anybody kid you. Okay, because I know some people have reported some wonk stuff. Like there are people catching smallmouth on the Upper Potomac and the Monocacy daily, crazy amounts of fish. Okay, because 2018 was that last flood. Okay, and now it's come back. The grass is back, okay? And it is back in droves, okay? Not just in the Tidal Potomac, okay? But in the Upper Potomac, okay? All through the Piedmont, especially on the Virginia side of the river, the grass is back. Thick grass. And what that does is that provides an incredible forage resource for our panfish and for our forage species, which then attract the smallmouth, which then the smallmouth grows faster because of that in grass environment, okay? That submerged vegetation, all that stuff, okay? So that is a huge plus. So 2021, 22 year classes, if you're looking to catch good numbers of fish, try, and this is what the state recommends, try Baywood, Independence, Freeze, Old Town, or Wilson. Those are their recommendations for catching in to get into some smallmouth down on the Upper New River. Pretty good recommendations. I fished two of those areas. It did pretty good. We caught like a fish, 30, 35, 40 fish. Okay. And looking to target larger fish, and larger fish is greater than 14 inches, or quote unquote trophy catches. That's a 20-inch smallmouth bass in Virginia. That would be your citation. Head to freeze. Independence, Shot Tower, or Baywood. That's the stretch. That's, anglers looking for other opportunities. Obviously, you got rock bass down there. Obviously, you got muskies. Flatheads are down there. You've got muskies now throughout the fishery. Okay. Channel cats, good stuff like that. I mean, the New River is got a wealth of fishing opportunities depending on what your poison is. Now, the one thing I think it's interesting about the New River data is looking at the upper, again, which is below Clater and then above Clater. You're going to see a disparity in the longer, and longer doesn't always necessarily mean weight bigger, because we could see that depending on what time of the year, pre-spawn, post-spawn, what time you catch it. We've seen that. We've seen some 19 and 20-inch fish look really, really skinny, okay? But what you're going to find is that the areas below downriver of Clater tend to be bigger fish, all the way to Pembroke, all the way to Ripplemead, all the way to Glenling, all the way, okay? Narrows, all that, okay? They tend to be. That does not mean that you can't catch a 20 or a 21 or even a 22 down in Freeze, down in Baywood, and down that, okay? Because you probably can. You're not going to catch as many, okay? A lot of that has to do with, I believe, the habitat difference and the water clarity and the water differences between the two sections, above, downriver of Clater, and then up New River. So if you look at the upper New River electro catch rates, you're going to see very, very small catch rates in their electro fishing for above 19 and a half to 20 inches. Okay. Now, so let's get into the juice. Okay. But before we do that, let's take a second and talk about some folks. Power Queen, obviously, couldn't do this channel, could not have grown this channel and growing our series without the support that we get from Power Queen. We also, you've got an event coming up on June 29th, I believe, in Winchester, Virginia, Jake's Bait and Tackle. You can come and you can check out Bent Rod Fishings. They are the guys behind the hover rig. Daniel's a cool dude. Go and check these baits out. You can check these out at Bent Rod. I'll put that down here for you guys. Bent Rod Fishing USA. Boom. BentRodFishingUSA.com. That should pop up there. And you can check out, it's called the hover rig. This thing is all straight fire right now. If you go to the Smallie Chaser River Bassin series page, you'll see some pictures of some of the smallmouth bass that have been caught with this particular setup. Okay, phenomenal. And I cannot be a do without talking about our friends at P-Line. Check out P-Line. Everybody knows tactical fluorocarbon for P-Line is probably the number one fluorocarbon, if you think about it. But this is one that I particularly like for smallmouth fishing, is the top water, especially this time of year. Especially if you're throwing a whopper plopper, a jerk bait, whopper plopper type presentation. Even like it with chatterbaits because it stays up a little bit higher. The buoyancy of this line keeps that bait up a little bit more. And if you're throwing in 2.5, 3 feet of water, probably want to switch to P-Line top water, okay? Just because you want to keep that bait in that water column. Otherwise, it's going to get down, and you really want to just keep it up in the water column. So check out P-Line, our friends at P-Line. And then I'm going to throw up what you can get involved in early, is hit the link in the chat, and go ahead and hit the free subscription to, the newsletter. And you want to do that now. The reason why you want to do that now is because that'll capture that, and then you will get the email to join the premium subscription for that is launching. And with that premium subscription comes your opportunity to be delivered smallmouth centric baits every single month directly to you as part of your subscription. Some of those baits may include a Lake's Edge square bill. It's a Tennessee shad. This is one of my favorite baits right here. That is a Tennessee shad. This is called the Sonic Side KO from Lakes. Look at that. That is an incredible bait. And of course, if you're a crawl guy, you got crawls too. So we got tons and tons, but it doesn't stop there. Okay. So not only you're going to have access to, we're going to deliver custom bait every month. You also get the opportunity to get access to the JDM baits. Okay. Delivered to you as well. All right. Whether it be JDM soft plastics, JDM BFS, finesse baits, or our JDM swim baits. Okay. So that is something that you're really going to take advantage of for the premium subscription, because you just get a bait. We'll do the feature on the bait, how to fish the bait, the techniques, pictures of the bass that have been caught with the bait, how it was caught with the bait, how you can utilize the bait, and then have the bait delivered to you. Pretty simple, right? Like we said, what we talk about, knowledge transfer. Okay. Probably lastly, before we get rolling back in, I do a lot of reading, guys. And one of the books I just got in and I'm reading right now, I'm almost halfway through it here, is Adam Merrifield. He's got a book out called The Mighty Smallmouth Catching Big Bass on Small Water. If you're a smallie chaser, pretty damn good book. So take a look at that. Some good information in here, especially, different activity, finding active bass, that kind of stuff in small, skinny water river systems. I want to check that book out. All right, back to our non-tidal Virginia river systems update. Okay, so now we're in the lower New River, okay, which the state qualifies as everything downstream of Clater to the West Virginia state line. Okay, that's a long ways. All right, and the river gets quite different. Okay, from when through the Radford area, up through the Parrott area, to the McCoy Mountain, to McCoy's Falls, and then below McCoy's Falls, all the way Eggleston Landing to Pembroke. It's different. I mean, you got a lot of ledges, and then you got some flat, little curvature. You got to remember, guys, when we're talking about the New River, it's all about topography. I don't know if you remember geology when we were kids, but these rivers are cutting right through mountains, okay? And so the topography of the mountain influences your river composition, whether it be ledges or, faults, depressions, pools, all this stuff, okay? And they vary from section to section, especially in the New River. And I will do some videos live as well as also some capture videos from the New River starting Thursday all weekend long. Okay, because we're going to break down that river. We're going to talk about the different sections. We're going to be on the river. We're going to be out there. We're going to be seeing the anglers fish. We'll be probably talking to some of the anglers while they're fishing, capturing some of their catches, all that good stuff. Okay, so we're going to be a blast. But unfortunately, this is from the state. Unfortunately, the lower New River was unable to be sampled in the fall of 2023. That's probably due to the weather, due to low water levels. Okay, due to the weather. Okay, caused by statewide drought. This marks the second year in a row that the lower New was not able to be sampled in the fall. Okay, could be why you're not hearing a lot of things coming out of the New, right? Anglers should still be enjoying fishing from the 2016 year class, which much of that class has reached 17 inches or more. Okay, that class is now 8 years old. Okay, and they're abundant in droves. Okay. They are. By any stretch of the imagination, whether you follow guides information, whether you follow the New River Fishing Group, whether you follow our series, whether you follow whatever, Southwest Virginia Fishing, literally 18s and 19s have become the norm. Okay? They just have. And I'm telling you, in 2025, do not be surprised if a record for length falls in the New River for smallmouth bass. I don't know about weight because it all depends on what time of year you catch it. But I'm saying there is a significant chance that those bass in that 216-year class, when they are 9 years old this year, okay, right? Going into 2025, they're going to be 9, okay, depending on when spawn was, all right, in that year, all right? There's a shot they're going to be some big ones at 22 and 23 plus inches, maybe 24. Who knows? We'll see. A lot of us factor it by weight. A lot of what you hear is always by weight and what the weight was by the record smallmouth bass in Virginia. But keep an eye on the length as long as they've been recording the length, because I think that could fall in 2025, if not sooner. We'll see what happens. And it'll be great if it comes from a river and not necessarily a lake. Some good news on the horizon is that the lower New River typically mirrors the upper river when it comes to year class strength. Anglers should expect to see some stronger year classes from 2021 and 2022. And so 2023's class last year, we don't know about because of that drought. We don't really know exactly what the survivability rate was of that spawning class in 2023 yet. We don't really know because we haven't had the surveys, and there's not a bunch of people out catching 4 and 5 and 6 inch smallmouth bass. Okay. And so keep that. And obviously you guys can check out this stuff. I'll throw the link up. If you're interested in muskie, that's in this forecast as well. The New River and the Upper James River, obviously phenomenal fisheries for muskie. Okay. Hands down best in the state, I would argue. All right, let's move on to probably two of the lesser known river systems. And we have not gone there. We have not. We do have some anglers that fish these rivers in the monthlies. So I do have kind of a good indication of the quality of fish in these rivers. But we have not fit. We will not be going to the Rappahannock and Rapidan rivers until like September. Okay. Myself growing up in Central Virginia, having lived in Loudon and then moving to Richmond and growing up, these river systems tend to be a lot better in the fall, which is why we kind of moved that scheduling to September, even though that's summer, but it's late summer and into October. We'll see what happens. These rivers experience extraordinarily low flows, like every river system in Virginia in 2023. Low flows during fall 2022 and 2023, which resulted in the surveys being canceled. So we don't really have the data other than what we know anglers are catching, because we didn't have any electro surveys in those rivers. Kind of does a disservice, but at the same time, what can you do when the rivers are really, really low? You can't really do a really qualified electro survey when the rivers are down that way. So we got the 2021 survey, and that's kind of like the baseline of what everyone's going off of, which was a pretty good year. And then everyone knows in Virginia in 2018 was the quote-unquote wettest year like in history. We had massive flooding in river systems all across Virginia and in Maryland. I imagine it stretched to West Virginia and North Carolina as well. Just crazy amounts. We're talking rivers like the Upper Potomac, I think over 20 feet plus, major flooding at Brunswick, just the whole, all the way down that watershed. Okay. What's interesting about the Rappahannock now is you're also getting a significant amount of largemouth bass population density. So for those people who like to target largemouth bass, that's also on the upside. I know we've seen that with a couple tournaments scheduled in the Tidal Rappahannock for largemouth bass. Smallmouth bass tends to be Fredericksburg area, a little bit below Fredericksburg, and then above in that stretch of the Fredericksburg, and then below in the Rappahannock down to where it gets brackish tends to be more largemouth. And so without that electro survey data, there's really not much, information really that can be discerned from that. I think the average catch is probably 14 and a half, 14, 15. There's some big ones that have been caught in the Rappahannock, especially the Rapidan or in the confluence area of the Rapidan and the Rappahannock. That's always a great area. There's limited access. So it does take a little bit to get into that area a little bit. If you're dedicated to that, you're going to get into some really good fish. But all in all, most of the fish along that whole watershed, is still in that, I think that, 12 to 15 range consistently of what people are getting. All right, let's move to the Shenandoah. We're going to start with the North Fork of the Shenandoah. Consistent spawning success should aid in improving the smallmouth bass population in the North Fork Shenandoah over the next few years. During the 2023 spring sampling, they collected 229 smallmouth at a rate of 43.4 fish per hour within 3 6-mile floats located within the upper, middle, and lower sections. So that was what I was talking about before, having like a little bit more of a variety of the river. So the catch rate was unchanged from the year prior. Approximately 57% of the smallmouth were 11 inches or greater, with 23% topping out at 14 inches. So that gives you a good indication. Probably the biggest hurdle that North Fork part of the Shenandoah watershed has experienced has been poor spawning. A lot of that is environmental. A lot of that issues continue on the Shenandoah River, that people have witnessed, whether it be fish kills, whether it be chemical spills, whether it be agriculture, whether it be runoff from the farms, chicken farms, all that, gets thrown in the mix. Whether or not all that is the reality, we don't really know, because we tend to keep studying the same studies over and over and over and really don't ever make any headway. But the numbers don't lie in terms of population density. But from an angling perspective, the river has definitely flipped a switch and been a lot more productive with quality fish lengthwise in the last 2 years. So keep that in mind. During the spring, biologists and hatchery staff raised fingerling smallmouth bass at the new Front Royal Fish Hatchery. Like I told you, like 30% of the overall budget has been reported to be going to fish stocking programs in Virginia. And some of that is smallmouth. A lot of that is trout. Okay. But just keep that in mind. Fortunately, the hatchery produced no more fish than was required of the study, a surplus. And they spread the surplus out in their stocking efforts in the North Fork. So as of fishing for 2024, anglers should target the middle reaches of the North Fork within the Woodstock to Edinburgh area. It's a predominantly popular section. Biologists observed decent overall numbers with the highest amount of quality fish within this section. So that's out there for the public, and not spot burning. That's out there for the public consumption, released by the state. And of course, North Fork has fall fish, largemouth, channel, muskie. It's got it all. Sunfish, got it all. Just keep that in mind. The main stem is the one that I grew up on. Okay, grew up fishing, which I've always preferred. I've always thought was the better of the 3 stems myself. But I think I'm probably in the minority. I know a lot of people tend to prefer the South Fork. And I think a lot of the stuff that comes out of the South Fork is also, there's more guides, there's more trips on the South Fork, I think, than the North Fork and the main stem combined. And so we hear more about the South Fork. But in reality, I believe the main stem holds bigger fish. Okay. And I believe a lot of the tournament results bear that out, and I believe a lot of the catch rates bear that out. 2023 fall sampling. So fall sampling on the main stem, spring sampling on the North Fork. Okay. 3 sites observed a catch rate of 64.2 fish per hour. So more fish than the North Fork in terms of a catch rate. That was a 28% increase in the total catch when compared to the 22 sample. So populations are growing. Okay. Again, snapshot, but still 43% were 11 inches or greater, with 15% topping 14 inches, 5% topping 17 inches. So 5% of the sampling in the fall were above 17 inches. Okay, we don't get a breakdown really any more than that. Main stem suffers from inconsistent fish health issues, much like the South Fork, as well as low spawning success. A lot of that is probably because of water temps and low water situations, okay, in my opinion. Spawn don't really do too well when you're only in a foot of water and that water is rising rapidly in temperature. That's not how it works, okay? Simple biology on that score. However, the spawn on the long-term average of 12 fish per hour, which was to improve our catch rates. Overall, we observed a good mix of size classes, albeit at low numbers. Therefore, anglers can expect a slight improvement in their catch rates for 2024. I think we've seen a little bit more than a slight improvement. If you factor in the whole main stem all the way up to West Virginia. Okay. I definitely think it's been a much improvement this year over last year. And of course, anglers have that opportunity for muskie as well up in those stretches. And now the walleye now are becoming prolific, not only in the upper Potomac, but also in the main stem Shenandoah, and Biggin, and as well as the Monocacy now in Maryland. So let's see here. They sampled in the spring of 2023. The main stem received 42,988 walleye fry. Here's where it could come from. Anglers should continue to experience increased catch rates and better numbers of big walleye in 2024. During the January sample, they captured 25 walleye at a rate of 8.1 fish per hour. In the February spawning run, biologists and technicians handled 80 fish with walleye averaged 20 inches in length, with the largest female measuring 31 inches. So it gives you a good indication. Okay, let's talk South Fork. South Fork is predominantly the most talked about river system, probably in Virginia, believe it or not. I mean, outside of the Tidal James because of Bassmaster and MLF and the Potomac in Virginia, Tidal Potomac. Okay, remove those. Non-tidal river systems. That's what we're talking about. So remember, that's the barometer for everything we're talking about. Okay, non-tidal, predominantly smallmouth. Okay. South Fork, known by anglers as the numbers fishery, meaning anglers can expect to catch a reasonable number of bass on any given day. During our 2023 fall sampling, they collected 701 smallmouth bass, 9 sample sites at a rate of 91.6 fish per hour. That's why you hear more about South Fork. It is a numbers game, quantity. There are far more. South Fork is more like the Susquehanna than probably any other river system in terms of quantity of population density at various different lengths. Okay, if you look at it from a length perspective. All right, very, very similar in terms of that. They've got fish stacked up at all the different sizes. That's what you get on Susquehanna. Okay, whereas on Susquehanna in Pennsylvania, you're going to struggle to put more than one 20-inch smallmouth in your limit. Okay, if you're in a tournament, you'll get 3 20-inch smallmouths on the New River. Okay, we've seen it. Okay, we had 106 inches in a month. Right, we've seen it. We've seen crazy things. You've seen it in the KBS smallmouth series from the New River, 100 inches. Okay, you've seen it. All right, and so again, so keep that in mind when people spin your yarns a little bit about, let's compare apples and apples here. Okay. But the South Fork definitely has numbers, okay? Question is, where's the South Fork going to be in a year from now in terms of citations, right? In terms of 20-inch. 701 smallmouth bass from 9 sample sites. 26% were 11 inches or greater. 9% topped 14. 2% measured 17 and up. So only 2% of that 700 we're already above 17 inches in length, okay? And so you just have to think about that. Or compare that to the New River, compare that to the Upper James, compare that to the Moyer River now, okay? And so things are changing. Yes, South Fork has an abundance of numbers, but is that abundance of numbers beginning to take its toll on the actual size of the adult smallmouth in the fishery? So that's always going to be an interesting thing to it also talks about the largemouth bass. So when you open this up, you can kind of check out what's going on with the largemouth bass as well. And then we obviously have flathead catfish and snakehead evidently were illegally introduced into the South Fork. Biologists discovered 1 adult flathead catfish below the Newport Dam and 1 adult snakehead upstream of Elkton. Both fish were removed and euthanized. This was the first time that either of these species were captured during an electro-survey event. So that goes to tell you, okay? But no Alabama bass yet, okay? So we got to keep an eye on it. Now let's move down to our last river system covered in this particular forecast, and that is the Stanton River. Okay. Probably one of the less fished rivers. I think that by any account, compared to what you're going to see Upper James, New River. There may not even be a Staunton River group like on Facebook, to my knowledge. I'm not really sure. And I will throw the Dan in there with it, or Roanoke River going through Roanoke. It's just not on like the radar of everyone. It probably should be, because things are happening very quickly in this watershed. People are catching some pretty big fish. And so smallmouth bass fishing in the river should continue to be average to good. Okay. When you put that out there, like, people are going to be less inclined to travel a long way to fish there, right? While the 2020 year class measured by density of young bass in our samples was poor, better than average year classes produced 15, 17, 19, 21, and 22 will maintain consistent catch rates of quality fish for the next several years. Catch rates in the fall electrofishing sampling show population densities 4 of the last 8 sample years above average. So that is where we're getting now. Okay, this is 6, 7, 8, and 9 years ago. Okay, these fish are now full-grown adults. Okay, if they've made it through everything. And among the best catch rates in 25 years. Let me say that again. Even though you probably haven't heard about the rivers, it is experiencing its best catch rates according to the state that it's experienced in the last 25 years. That's huge. 2016, 2020, 23 year classes were poor to average due to high rainfall and extreme flows. In 2018, we've talked about before, major flood years, resulted in those spawns being very challenged. Okay. Stanton has excellent smallmouth bass habitat in the reaches of Brookneal. Anglers new to the river should concentrate on the abundant rocky habitat as well as submerged trees extending from the riverbanks. The river also holds several Kentucky spotted bass, and the chance to catch a spot over 12 inches is very good. Basically, those spotted bass and even Alabama bass will reproduce very, very rapidly, guys. And they have been reproducing very, very rapidly in that watershed coming up from North Carolina. I mean, that's the range is being expanded up into Virginia. We've seen it in the Upper New. We've seen it in the Stanton, the Dan. I think some reports in the Roanoke. And so it's just a matter of, you got Gaston to your right. Okay. You've got the New River and Clater and, to your left, if you're looking at it on the map. And this is what's happening to the range. Okay. So this is why it's classified as an invasive species that every angler that chases smallmouth needs to recognize and keep an eye on, because that's just the way that is. And you really, really can't get around it. There's not really much that we can do other than remove them, and we'll see whether or not a bounty program turns around. We do in our series when we fish those rivers, like we're fishing the New this weekend. We'll have a bounty program out for Alabama bass to remove those from the watershed. As of 2021, Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources has requested that anglers remove Alabama bass every chance that they get from river systems because of this migration. Okay, it is an invasive migration from North Carolina into Virginia. Now, Maryland, to my knowledge, the Upper Potomac and the Shenandoah main stem has yet to experience any Alabama bass findings. And so that threshold now is the New River. I'm not sure about Greenbrier, but is the New River, okay, on the western side of Virginia, and is the Roanoke River, Dan River, Stanton River, all the way to the Lake Gaston. And I get down this way would be Bugs and Kerr and all that, okay? And so obviously you know what's going on down there. It's going to become Lake Norman in the next decade. and whether or not they choose to make it and just accept it for what it is as a sport fish. And as we saw what MLF and Bassmaster have done. They've accepted the spots. They've accepted that that's their events now because there's so many, they're so prolific, and they tend to be easier to catch from what people say, down there for them to hold events for that. But there is going to be a negative impact at some point down the line in our rivers because they will, take habitat. They are aggressive. They are territorial. They are all that in terms of our smallmouth, and they will hybridize. And so there's a chance, just like what happened down in North Carolina, that you can lose your pure smallmouth. And, depending on how old you are and depending on how much you care, 20 years from now, if the Alabama bass gets up in fisheries like the Allegheny, Clarion, Juniata, Susquehanna, you can forget about smallmouth river fishing in the region 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because it'll happen. It'll all be just greenfish or half smallmouth, half spot, half smallmouth, half whatever. But it's not going to be your pure smallmouth species. And I get it. I know I always get this whenever I do videos like this, and I totally am forthfront about it. Smallmouth is not a native species to Maryland, Virginia, okay, Pennsylvania, Susquehanna. It's not a native species to Susquehanna, okay. Smallmouths are invasive as well. So just want to put that out there. So I don't get the whole people pounding away at me. But we've all naturally come to accept smallmouth and largemouth as the predominant black bass species, and so we would like to preserve those species, obviously, for future fishing endeavors, for future generations, not to take anything away from Alabama bass or anything spotted bass, but they can stay where they are as far as I'm concerned. I got no problem with them. Just stay where they are. Because they will destroy, shouldn't say destroy. They will augment a fishery for themselves, which will be detrimental to smallmouth. All right, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. That is your non-tidal update on your non-tidal river forecast for the Commonwealth of Virginia, released by the Department of Wildlife Resources this year. Plus, with my opinion and my observations from our series, we chase smallmouth only. We fish in rivers only in our series. So the fish that I see, the fish that we talk about, the fish that we enjoy to chase only come from rivers. So that's the resource that we have and the knowledge that we have shared with one another about what we're seeing on our river systems, and giving that information to the state. I encourage you, if you are an angler, whether you're chasing largemouth or smallmouth or any species in Virginia, participate in the Virginia Angler Recognition Program. That'll allow you to get a certificate for your multi-species, whatever you're targeting for your citations. Again, in Virginia, a smallmouth is 20 inches. You can get a citation for length as well as weight. So either one. So always kind of take your picture. You just have to, you don't have to keep you can catch and release the fish, but make sure you take a picture on a board, either a catch board or a Yak Attack leaderboard. It just hit the market, I believe, yesterday. I believe it hit the market yesterday. So check that out. Yak Attack. I think it's yakattack.com. Look up the leaderboard. You can measure it, submit it, or take a photo of you weighing it and submit it that way, I believe. And those are your acceptable. I would encourage you, if you are that lucky person that gets what you believe to be is a new state record, when that happens, I believe that is going to happen here in the next 2 years. When that happens, make sure that you contact those numbers. Okay. Make sure you have your area where you fish predominantly. If there's a chance you got that number to call your DWR or your DNR to have one of the guys, conservation officers, get out and be able to document that. Okay. Because that is a major, major big deal. And I truly believe that we are most likely going to see a smallmouth length record get beaten here in the next 2 years, just based on what all of us are seeing and just based on how many. I think the Smallie Chaser River Bassin Series has eclipsed 70 citation smallmouths already caught and registered. So that tells you right there. There is some of the best smallmouth fishing, river smallmouth fishing in the country right here in our region. So take advantage of that. If you'd like to come and fish with us, the Smallie Chaser River Bass and Series, you can find us on Tourney X. There is a summer chase that begins on Saturday, June 22nd. You can register for that on Tourney X, and you can fish from June 22nd all the way to Labor Day and score all of your smallmouth fish. Does not matter what size it is, for your chance at random prizes, chance at payouts, chances at all kinds of good stuff to keep us fishing during the summer in those hot months. And so that'll replace for our series the July and the August monthlies that we normally do. We just kind of keep it together. We know a lot of people go on vacation late July and August. Some people aren't fishing as much because of the heat, because of the weather. And so we just wanted to keep it into a kind of like a 3-month-long event for everybody that wants to get involved with that and just come chase some smallies with us. Again, we've got a New River event on Saturday on the New River. That is on Tourney X with registration open until, I believe, 9 p.m. Make it 8 p.m., but I think it's 9 p.m. Make it 8. Just do by 8. 8 p.m., okay, Friday night. Okay, you can register for that event. You can enter in with your buddy and do a buddy float and enter the team division, or you can enter in fish as an individual, and you can fish all the way, as it stands right now, all the way from Radford to Sandstone Falls in West Virginia. We may pay attention to the Facebook page. We may open it up to the lower New River we talked about tonight because of the low water situation. If Clater, if they do not plan on opening up the gates and opening up the water for the weekend, we're going to probably make that determination tomorrow night ahead of time to open up the lower New River. So that opens up a lot more water for people. Probably cuts down on the travel time and travel distance if you're in that part of the state. And you can enjoy an awesome day of fishing, meet some new people who love to chase smallies, who will help you out. And if you're new to the scene, you know what? Hit me up. I'll set you up. We can get on a float with somebody. You can check out somebody's rigs, all the different kayaks, talk to guys about the different brands of kayaks that you might be interested in, all that good stuff. But again, I'm always here as a resource for anything that you will need, both on the Smallie front and both as in fishing in the DMV, the District of Maryland, and Virginia, largemouth, smallmouth, you got it, you name it. You guys know the deal. Again, I appreciate you for helping me hit that 23,000 subscriber level on YouTube. Pay particular attention to that giveaway coming up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do me a favor and do that so you can participate that. And one more time before I go, don't forget to take advantage of getting in on that free subscription. You can use that QR code, or you can go to Substack Smallmouth Army and get that free subscription. All the article posts, all the information just go come into your inbox and your email, but you'll also get an invite to the paid subscription, which will get you the ability to also have a bait sent to you at home every single month that we're featuring, that we're throwing, that we're using to target smallmouth, and that we're catching smallmouth with. And a lot of these baits are not baits that you're going to find at Dick's or Bass Pro or online at any online retailers, okay? A lot of them are customs, and a lot of them are JDM Japanese baits coming from Japan that are basically awesome for smallmouth, okay? You guys got any questions about the brands, hit me up and I can run you through the brands. They're going to be available. But you guys are familiar with Depths and Megabass and Hideout and Bottom Up and Jackal and all Noki and all these different Japanese baits. They're coming, okay? And so we're going to introduce you guys to them. We're going to get you those baits and get you out on the water and get you the techniques and the strategies in order to present those baits effectively, so you can go out there and you can catch as many smallmouth bass or largemouth. They work on largemouth too, that you can then you're on your next trip out. Again, appreciate you guys every day. Again, if you have any questions about anything or you got any observations that you're seeing out on your river, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can use the J.L. Scott Fishing Facebook page messenger, or you can use the Smallie Chaser River Bassin Facebook messenger from the series page to get in contact with me. And we will take it from there. All right, guys.